What is up, guys and girls? Welcome back to another Starfield video / cyberpunk video. And this is a bit of an interesting one because I feel like there's a deeper issue at hand here that we need to talk about. And this is going to be an interesting one as well because it involves two of my favorite games of this year, which is Starfield and Cyberpunk 2077 with 2.0 with the Phantom Liberty expansion. And after reading these articles, man, and these responses, these tweets, my perspective has somewhat changed, and I mean that's the beauty of gaming, man, and that's the beauty of opinions. Your opinion can change over time because these games have an influence on people's opinions over time, and I think that's the whole beauty of having discussion videos, man. But anyway, so recently a CDPR dev, Patrick K. Mills, which is the senior quest designer at CDPR, came out and defended the work of Bethesda, which is Starfield, saying that the devs at Bethesda are just doing something different with their time, and that's cool. And this came as a result of a tweet by Synth Potato when he tweeted that, as much as I like Starfield, the creation engine needs to go. Going back to Cyberpunk puts in perspective just how outdated Starfield's dialogue animations are, and it is staggering. Regressing to a rigid camera angle that was left behind in 2006 with Oblivion and entirely eliminating body language is one of the most stunningly stupid decisions I've seen designers make. Why regress to Oblivion? They had a far better angle in Skyrim and Fallout 4. Neither had good facial animations, but at least it didn't lock you in and remove body language entirely like Starfield does. In the video I have for Cyberpunk, Judy actually has restless leg syndrome and constantly shakes a leg while sitting. Details like that give NPCs life. Starfield does not have body animations in dialogue aside from basic turns and the occasional generic hand gesture. I've been really feeling more and more critical of Starfield after going back to Cyberpunk. With the constant load screens, awful dialogue, camera, and lackluster animations, it really upsets me how Bethesda refuses to move on from that garbage engine that was already outdated by 2015 with Fallout 4 and is an absolute joke in 2023. Object persistence is not worth losing everything else that makes modern games feel modern. This stuff was in Cyberpunk back in 2020. I really don't think it, even with patches, that Starfield can ever really match this level of quality. This is fundamentally the fault of the creation engine. Wow, what a mouthful, man. That is a lot to say there. Wow. Now, first of all, I wouldn't call a dev's creative decisions stupid. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a stupid decision. At the end of the day, there is a thing called originality and creativity. With all Starfield's faults, right? Starfield is a Bethesda game, and Bethesda is known for a certain game type, and that is their DNA. In no way, shape, or form are two games to be similar. The way they play, the way they look, and the way they feel. Otherwise, creativity goes out the window, right? Now, yes, I was critical as well about how the camera angle in dialogues, you know, it can be off-putting at times, right? That in one of my previous videos I said at times it works, at most times it does not work, and I wish that Starfield had the more cinematic approach. But at the end of the day, I am still able to love and enjoy Starfield for what it is, you know. Minus all those faults, I'm still able to play it, enjoy it, and enjoy the game basically for what it is. Now, many people are not able to do so, understandably, because they want every game to follow the cinematic, flashy approach. And Starfield and Fallout 4 games from Bethesda's past, they are not flashy games. They are not known for being flashy, like the God of Wars, like the Call of Duties, like, you know, like the Spider-Man, all that stuff. They are not flashy games, and that is fine also. And I think that is why a lot of people also say that Starfield is boring, that they get bored with it, because why? It's not flashy, it's not cinematic, it's not but the game is what it is. It has Bethesda DNA, and if you love previous Bethesda games, you will love this game, right? Now, with that being said, one of my reasons why I think that Starfield is not the generational game that it pushes the vision for gaming further. I felt that Bethesda did not innovate their formula. right? They only refined their formula, but they did not innovate it in a way to push it to the next level. And I said that I think that the creation engine might be holding the ambition of what Starfield was supposed to be. Right? That was one of my reasons why I said the game is not generational. And I still stand by the fact that Bethesda did not innovate their formula. Now, to be fair and not to play devil's advocate here, but Starfield is one of the most stunning games out there today. And you are lying to yourself if you do not think so. Yes, we know the dead-eyed NPCs look horrible, but I'm talking about the amount of detail that Bethesda threw into the ships, the textures on the mix, on the guns, on the interiors, all that. Even on a simple thing as rocks and terrain that we see on these planets, the amount of detail they threw into this. In that sense, you could say that Bethesda innovated the formula, because in my opinion, Bethesda has never been known to put out the best looking games out there, you know, the most insane graphic fidelity games, the most beautiful games out there. Whereas with Starfield, they did that. So maybe because they put 16 times the detail actually now in into a game, they probably had to cut some costs. You know, they probably had to cut some costs with the dialogue animations. Who knows? Like I said, at the end of the day, I think Bethesda as the devil will be the only one who can answer that question. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that. But after looking at it from the perspective of a dev who's actually in the business, who's in the gaming development business, I have more of an appreciation of that perspective, and I see it, and I can see it from their side as well. So Patrick K. Mills responded to this tweet, right? Okay, so I'm going to be reading from the article that reported on the CDPR dev's response to this tweet, because I feel like it's just better summarized and easier to read. So just bear with me. So the article says that senior quest designer and self-declared Starfield fan Patrick K. Mills, who also served as a quest designer on The Witcher 3 and its expansions, expressed a very different opinion on how each game approaches cinematics. He believes that the issue is not one of capability but of priority. Very important. Just remember that it was one of priority. As we further read into this article and we read the responses, bear that in mind. He goes further on to say that it's not a focus for them for a lot of reasons, meaning that the cinematic style of camera angles, dialogues, and interaction, whatever you want to call it, it was not the main focus for Bethesda, and the necessarily high level of player freedom is actually as big a deal as the tools. And as we know, Bethesda games loves to give the player the highest level of freedom in the games. That is without a doubt, and that is what Starfield is. So with Starfield, whether you wanted the more cinematic approach, like I know I wanted it as well, that was not the main priority. It was not the main focus. It was the player freedom. Now bear that in mind. Just bear that in mind. He goes further on to say that you can't do the Judy Roof thing in Starfield because you can have that scene play out on 100-something different planets at any time. Furthermore, he goes on to say they do some scenes that are staged in a more refined way, like meeting Constellation for the first time and some quest sequences, etc. Exactly. There are some stage scenes, for example, like the one I used in my video where I asked the question of whether the game should have had the cinematic camera style, or it should have just been in third-person mode. Because that scene that I was using as an example was where we just encountered the Starborn, and an emergency meeting was called by the Constellation members. Everyone was gathered around the table at the lodge, and it just felt intense. It felt immersive, you know, in that moment before your face was ripped into the front viewing dialogue camera. It goes further on to say, but they have vastly more scenes with a revolving cast of characters and a mind-boggling number of possible locations. And that is true. Whether or not you love or hate the procedurally generated planets, you can't deny that it is vast, that the scale of Starfield it's insane. Right? And like I said, with the foundation that Bethesda laid down, they can take this game into many directions by adding many stories for the coming years, many expansions and things like that. So everything that we now said previously, keep that in mind, because now we're getting to the juicy parts, right? By comparison, he said that every big scene in Cyberpunk 2077 took years to make. If someone tried to do that in a game with the scale of Starfield, you'd be making the game forever. Oh, okay, that's very interesting. Instead, BGS puts their resources into giving maximum levels of player freedom. They are just doing something different with their time, and that's cool. Mills wrote, you can want these scenes to be more cinematic or whatever, and that's fair, but it comes at a cost. Wow, okay. Remember that point there, it comes at a cost, because that is a very interesting point, and I went to go look deeper into Cyberpunk 2077 when I read this. And we're going to address it later on in the video, but let's just continue reading what is being said here. Mills said that he wasn't replying to disparage the original poster, but simply to make the point that not every game can do everything. You can't make a game that has every feature executed to the same level as the best in that field, and it has very little to do with the engine you are using. There we go again. Like I said, just because one game executes a specific feature excellently, like the cinematic camera interaction thing that Cyberpunk has, doesn't mean that a game like Starfield should implement the same system. And that is again where I say creativity comes in. Creative decisions come in. Two games can never look the same or feel the same or play the same or act out in the same way, because where is originality and creativity then? Then it goes down the drain. Then we have generic games following the same suit after one another. That is where I appreciate Starfield for what it is, because it is something different. It's a Bethesda game through and through, whether you like that or not. Like I said, it's not everybody's cup of tea. With that in mind, where he says that he's giving that Bethesda put all the resources into giving the players the maximum level of freedom, that is what the game is. And I know I'm going to get comments stating that, oh, but if you walk for 45 minutes in one direction, you're going to hit an invisible wall. And my answer to that is, and again, this is just my opinion, why are you running in the same direction for 45 minutes? Why are you not playing the game? You must have a lot of time on your hands to be doing that. And that is what I said in one of my previous videos, is that when you go with the mindset to look for these issues in the game, instead of playing the game and enjoying it for what it is, you're looking for these cracks and constantly comparing it to other games, you are not going to enjoy yourself. And for that matter, with any game, not just Starfield, but with any game, if you go with the mindset in to look for these cracks and faults, you're not going to enjoy the game, because you've already formed your opinion subjectively that you're not going to like the game when you encounter those downfalls, those cracks and things like that, when the game doesn't meet your expectations. Okay, now let's move back to the part where he says that you can want these scenes to be more cinematic or whatever, and that's fair, but it comes at a cost. And this is what grabbed me, you know. This is where I did some digging. So let's look at it. This is an article I found, which is typically a review that was criticizing Cyberpunk's player freedom mechanics in the game. So the article reads, Cyberpunk 2077 succeeds at letting you play the game however you want to play it, and including everything from all the go, anywhere, do anything games of the past, but it doesn't feel free. It doesn't even feel half as free as games like Breath of the Wild or the Outer Wilds. This is how you get the split between the early critics review and the early players review. When judged as a Ubisoft-style open-world game, Cyberpunk 2077 is a success. It's a large, detailed world, an interesting story, and a wealth of different mechanics to sink your teeth into. That is absolutely correct. But as a game that makes you feel free, a game that feels open and loose and flexible, when judged from that perspective, the game is a failure. Very interesting. Remember, a game that makes you feel free, feels open and loose and flexible. Does that not sound like Starfield? The article goes further on to say that, and the thing is, this dichotomy is exactly what defines Cyberpunk 2077 as an experience. You can feel that this game wanted to offer both the Ubisoft-style open world and the Breath of the Wild-styled freedom. And I think at one point in development, the game may have been on track to deliver that. But it seems that as time pressed on and the scope of the game expanded and the pressure to release intensified, The designers had to make tough choices, and those choices all involved retreating back to the tried and true strategies from the map market driven Ubisoft style open world games. That is very interesting. So when he says that it came at a cost, because their focus was to give that cinematic experience, to give that making the world feel completely alive, you know, like Synth Potato said, body animations, all that stuff like that. And that is what the CDPR dev is saying. It came at a cost, and that cost was the player freedom. Or at least they were not able to achieve the highest level of player freedom because they had to make cutbacks. Interesting, very interesting. Now let me know what your opinion is on this. But to me, and I think that's where it also comes into when we look at the whole consequence system of Starfield, where I also said that to me was one of the biggest things missing from it, right? But when I look at games like Fallout 4 that I played and that where you can play with in every faction and things like that, it gives you the freedom to do all those things. It does not lock you out of those quests. That is why it's giving you the maximum level of freedom to go out there and explore and do all those things. You won't be locked out of quests because you made this decision and that decision. Now, yes, do I still wish that the game did the consequence system better? Maybe that it still included all that, but there was some sort of overreaching, overbranching consequences that flows from one faction to the next faction. Yes, it could probably have been implemented better. Yes, surely. But I feel that the priority for Bethesda has always been the player freedom to play the game as you want, doing all the quests, all the factions, all of that, you know. And yes, you hit invisible walls. Yes, you hit an insane amount of loading screens, and I still stand by that. There does not need to be a loading screen for every single room building that there is. So if there was one criticism that I can still say needs to go, it is the loading screens, man. But if you look at even the space exploration, the space traversal, like I said in one of my previous videos, the more I play the game, the more I appreciate that Bethesda is not wasting my time for me to take 20 minutes to get to a particular planet, another 20 minutes to land on that planet or to fly from that planet. Instead, the convenience of the fast travel system makes it much easier for me to get on those planets, to get into those cities, to explore, to discover new things. Now, yes, the option to have done all those things would still have been appreciated, but at the end of the day, the more I play Starfield, the more I do appreciate the fast travel system. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on that, because at the end of the day, Starfield is not a space sim. It is a space RPG or an RPG game set in space. It is not a No Man's Sky. It is not, what's the game called? Star Citizen. And maybe we can blame the marketing of the game. Now, you know what? We can absolutely blame the marketing of the game that marketed as such that it was going to be Fallout 4 with No Man's Sky space traversal or Star Citizen space traversal set in an RPG, galaxy thing like that. But that is not what the game is. And once you avert your expectations, you can have a lot of fun with Starfield. Now, with that being said, right, let's go back to one of his other tweets where he says, every major scene in 2077 took literally years to make. In Starfield, I can propose to like 10 different NPCs and I can do it on any of 1,000 different planets. You can't do elaborate scene designs like that. You'll be making the game forever. Exactly. Imagine that there were scenes like that for every single encounter. Given the scale of how big Starfield is, could you imagine how long it would have been taking them? They would not have been able to actually launch this game this year. It would have probably needed another 5 something years in order to pull that off. And I mean, Patrick K. Mill says he's not an engine guy, right? And that he would be stand corrected if someone else can give more insight onto it. But at the end of the day, it was a matter of priority more than capabilities. Now, do I still think that the creation engine is holding the ambition of Starfield back? Probably, but at the end of the day, like I said, only Bethesda as the developer has the answer to that. But reading this situation and these articles, man, it really changed my perspective, and it was really enlightening to see it from the other side, because I'm always open for discussion, different opinions, to have a solid conversation about it. Okay, now going back to the article, so the writer here saying that I'm not a game developer, but I think it's a reasonable take. Yes, I do think it's a reasonable take. I'm also not a game developer. I'm just some gamer on YouTube giving my opinion and opening a platform for discussion on the matter. I haven't played Cyberpunk 2077 or Starfield yet, but I played a lot of The Witcher 3 and earlier Bethesda games, and they are fundamentally different. The Witcher 3 plays like a sandbox game, but at its core it's a linear experience with encounters fixed at certain locations and times. That's correct. Starfield, on the other hand, is a sandbox. Some elements are preset, but there's an extensive use of randomization. That is absolutely true. And that means a lot of unexpected stuff can happen anytime, anywhere. That is absolutely true. It may be occasionally janky, but as Mel said about CD Projekt's more cinematic approach to Cyberpunk 2077, that's part of the cost of that level of player freedom. There it is again. So you understand. If Bethesda had to go with a more cinematic approach, then that means the freedom of the player would have been impacted, would it not? Let me know your thoughts. That would be at the cost of the player's freedom, and as we declared recently, at this point in Bethesda's history is not a bug, it's a feature. So basically, I have to agree, Starfield is a sandbox where there are preset stuff, but there's a lot of randomization, and I've seen this a lot where there are a lot of unexpected things happening anytime, anywhere. Like, for example, I've been at Atlantic City, now I leave, I do a couple of quests, I come back to Atlantic City, I'm seeing new faces, I'm seeing new NPCs that I can have discussions with. There are some things that are just popping up randomly, like new things, and I've been noticing it for the past couple of playthroughs now, that I'm going back to these cities right after exploring and things like that, and they are different NPCs all of a sudden that I haven't seen before. There are different places that I haven't discovered yet. It's very interesting. But yeah, guys, I thought this was a very interesting thing, because look at Cyberpunk 2077. 3 years later, like when I said that the ambition of Starfield might be held back by the creative engine, but if you look at games like Cyberpunk 2077, 3 years later, they've released the 2.0 update, which sort of overhauled the entire base game, and they released an ambitious Phantom Liberty expansion. And I feel like CD Projekt Red finally materialized the ambition that they had for Cyberpunk 3 years later. They finally achieved that. If I look at Starfield and I put it in the same light as that, I think that Starfield can also achieve the same thing. So I don't agree with the last part that Synth Potato says here, that he doesn't think that no matter how many patches and updates Starfield can bring, it cannot match the quality, that level of quality CD Projekt Red achieved with Cyberpunk. But yeah, I don't agree with that. The game can change. We've seen it with Cyberpunk. The game changed. The game's fundamentally changed. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on this, guys. I thought it was an interesting one, an interesting topic for discussion. Let me know if it changed your perspective. If you look at it from the side of a dev, I definitely do have a more of appreciation for the other side as well, to see exactly what goes, to get a more of an understanding into the other side. Because all that I've done is basically discuss it from a fan of gaming, as a gamer, playing these games, as a consumer, playing these games, buying these games, and playing these games. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. I would love to know your thoughts on this whole topic, guys. As always, guys, I gotta love and leave you. Stay safe out there. Rampage out. Peace.